A great city is a story of human triumph, yet the final chapter is often a blank page. Across every continent and era, major urban centers have been suddenly, completely, and mystically abandoned. The streets fall silent, the buildings empty, and the vibrant story of a community simply stops. Why does this happen? This is one of history's most profound and recurring puzzles. By the end of this exploration, you will understand the complex tapestry of forces that can cause a civilization to walk away from its greatest achievements. We will journey to 30 of these places, from ancient proto-cities to modern metropolises frozen in time. We will see how environmental shifts can strangle a city, how economic lifelines can be cut, and how political decisions can erase a map. Yet for many of these sites, the ultimate reason remains locked within their ruins. What common thread connects a Neolithic settlement to a 20th century power plant town? Our investigation begins with one of the very first cities ever built, a place that thrived for millennia without a single street. What does it mean for a society to simply vanish, leaving only stones and questions behind? Çatalhöyük is a sprawling, silent mound rising from the plains of central Turkey. For over 1,400 years, from around 7100 BCE, it was home to a remarkable community of up to 10,000 people. This was not a city as we picture it today. There were no streets, no public squares, no grand avenues. Instead, the people built a single, dense, living structure. Their rectangular homes, made of mud brick, were packed tightly together like the cells of a honeycomb. To move through the city, you would walk across the rooftops, descending through holes in the ceilings by wooden ladders into the dark, intimate rooms below. The walls of these homes were canvases. They were painted with vivid scenes of wild bulls and leopards, and adorned with the plastered skulls of ancestors, a profound connection between the living and those who came before. The society was sophisticated, artistic, and deeply symbolic, a thriving experiment in urban living that predated the pyramids of Egypt by thousands of years. Then, around 5700 BCE, this experiment slowly came to an end. The ladders were pulled up for the last time, the hearth fires grew cold, and the paintings were left in darkness. The abandonment was not sudden, but a gradual fading over generations. Why did they leave? Researchers point to a changing world. The climate may have shifted, bringing drier conditions that strained their agriculture. The very land around them might have been exhausted from centuries of farming and grazing, or depleted of the timber they needed for construction and fuel. Some scholars suggest the social model itself, that intensely close-knit, streetless existence, may have finally become too constrained, prompting groups to splinter off and establish new communities with different designs for living. Yet no evidence points to a catastrophic invasion, a great fire, or a single disaster. The mystery of Çatalhöyük is not one of violent ends, but of a quiet, deliberate departure. A people who mastered a unique way of life for millennia ultimately chose, for reasons we can only piece together from soil samples and bone fragments, to walk away from it, leaving behind a buried library of art and architecture with its final chapter gently erased. The story of urban abandonment shifts from a single, silent mound to an entire civilization of silent streets. Over 4,000 years ago, in what is now Pakistan, the city of Mohenjo-daro stood as a marvel of the ancient world. It was a metropolis of the Indus Valley civilization, a culture that stretched across a vast area rivaling ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. What made Mohenjo-daro extraordinary was its profound sense of order. The city was laid out in a precise grid of streets, with standardized kiln-fired bricks used in every building. It boasted one of the world's first sophisticated urban water and sewer systems, with covered drains running beneath the streets and indoor wells in many homes. This was a society that valued civic planning, public bathing in a great central pool, and a remarkable uniformity in weights and measures across its trade networks. Then, around 1900 BCE, this meticulous order began to unravel. The civilization entered a period of decline, and Mohenjo-daro, like its sister cities, was gradually left behind. The departure was not marked by layers of ash or shattered weapons. Archaeologists have found no evidence of a sudden, violent conquest, no mass burials suggesting a catastrophic event. Instead, the city seems to have simply faded, its well-engineered streets slowly filling with dust. So what happened to a society so advanced it seemingly had an answer for everything? The leading theories point to environmental pressures. The lifeblood of Mohenjo-daro was the Indus River. Some research suggests its course may have shifted dramatically over centuries, turning fertile farmlands into arid plains and crippling the agricultural base that fed the city. Other studies point to a larger pattern of climate change, a prolonged drought that would have strained resources across the entire region. There is also the cultural theory of migration, the idea that groups from the northwest, sometimes referred to as the Aryans, may have moved into the area, not as destroyers, but as a new population whose different ways gradually overshadowed the old urban order. Yet none of these explanations feel complete. They describe a slow squeeze, not a single knockout blow. The true mystery of Mohenjo-daro is how a civilization that mastered urban living on such a rational scale could not engineer a solution to its own gradual end. Its abandonment is a quiet, unsettling testament to the fact that even the most brilliantly planned city is ultimately at the mercy of the world around it. From the ordered streets of the Indus Valley, our journey moves to a different kind of architectural wonder, one built not from uniform bricks but from unmortared stone. In the southern highlands of Africa, the silent, soaring walls of Great Zimbabwe stand as a testament to a kingdom that mastered an entire continent's wealth. This was no outpost, but the heart of a powerful state that flourished from the 11th to the 15th centuries, a center of political and spiritual authority that controlled the lucrative trade in gold, ivory, and copper across the Indian Ocean. Its very name, Zimbabwe, derives from the Shona phrase meaning houses of stone, and those houses were monumental. The most iconic structure is the Great Enclosure, a vast, elliptical wall standing over 30 feet tall in places, constructed without any mortar, each granite block meticulously shaped to fit the next. Within these walls were dwellings for the elite, and a mysterious conical tower whose purpose remains a subject of scholarly debate. This was a city of perhaps 20,000 people at its peak, a bustling hub where artisans crafted fine pottery and traders negotiated deals that connected the African interior to ports 1,000 miles away. Then, around the middle of the 15th century, this capital was abandoned. The royal court moved north, the skilled masons laid down their tools, and the great walls were left to the elements. Why would a society walk away from such a symbol of its own power and prosperity? The explanations point to a combination of pressures that may have slowly unraveled the kingdom's stability. Political succession disputes could have fractured central authority. The very success of the city may have led to overpopulation, straining local resources. The gold fields that funded its wealth might have become depleted, or the demand for its primary export could have shifted due to changing trade routes. Most compelling is the evidence of environmental change. Studies of climate data suggest a period of prolonged drought settled over the region, a shift that would have devastated the agricultural base feeding the populous capital. A city built on trade could survive many challenges, but a city that could not feed itself faced a fundamental crisis. The abandonment created a vacuum of knowledge that European colonists, encountering the ruins centuries later, filled with fantastical and dismissive myths, falsely attributing its construction to foreign powers like the Phoenicians or the Queen of Sheba. They could not conceive of such sophistication arising from African ingenuity. The true mystery of Great Zimbabwe, therefore, is twofold. It asks us to understand why a great capital fell silent, and to recognize how the silence of history can be so easily filled with stories meant to diminish. Its empty stone corridors are a monument not to a sudden catastrophe, but to a slow, complex unraveling, and a lasting legacy that colonial narratives tried and failed to erase. Across the Atlantic, a different kind of earthen monument once dominated the landscape. Cahokia was a city of staggering scale, the largest pre-Columbian settlement north of Mexico. Rising from the fertile floodplains near the confluence of the Mississippi and Missouri rivers, its centerpiece was Monk's Mound, an enormous earthen platform covering 14 acres and rising 100 feet high, a man-made mountain that required moving over 22 million cubic feet of soil by hand. At its zenith around 1050 to 1200 CE, Cahokia was a thriving metropolis supporting perhaps 20,000 people, a hub of trade, ceremony, and political power whose influence rippled across the continent. Its grand plaza hosted ceremonial games and gatherings, and its skyline was dotted with over 100 other mounds, platforms for temples and homes of the elite. This was a cosmopolitan center, a place where copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Gulf Coast, and mica from the Appalachians all converged. Then, within a few centuries, this bustling heartland emptied. By the 14th century, Cahokia was essentially abandoned, its great mounds left to the grasses and the silence. Why did such a powerful and populous city dissolve? Without written records, archaeologists piece together the story from the soil itself, and the picture they paint is one of a society pushed to its limits by the very environment that once nurtured it. The city's rapid growth and construction frenzy would have required massive amounts of timber, leading to widespread deforestation of the surrounding bluffs. This loss of tree cover likely triggered severe erosion and catastrophic flooding in the agricultural bottomlands, the very fields that fed the massive population. Some evidence suggests periods of prolonged drought may have also stressed the food supply. This environmental strain could have sparked social unrest as resources grew scarce and the authority of the rulers who presided over the grand constructions was called into question. There is no sign of a sudden, violent end from an outside force. Instead, the abandonment appears to have been a gradual dispersal, a slow unraveling as families and clans, facing hardship, made the decision to leave and establish smaller, more sustainable communities elsewhere. The mystery of Cahokia is not of a city destroyed, but of a city that simply could not sustain its own magnificent ambition. Its silent mounds stand as a profound reminder that even the most impressive human achievements are built upon a delicate balance with the natural world, a balance that, once lost, can cause a civilization to quietly walk away from its greatest works. The ambition of Cahokia was mirrored on an even grander scale in Southeast Asia. Deep within the jungles of modern Cambodia, the city of Angkor was not just a capital, it was a living machine. At its height, the Khmer Empire's heart was a sprawling metropolis of perhaps 1 million people, sustained by an engineering marvel that turned the landscape itself into a source of power. This was a hydraulic city, a civilization built upon water. A vast, intricate network of canals, reservoirs, and massive artificial lakes called barrays captured the monsoon rains, distributing water for rice agriculture throughout the year and preventing devastating floods. This system allowed Angkor to flourish, supporting the construction of its iconic stone temples, including the magnificent Angkor Wat, a microcosm of the Hindu universe rendered in sandstone. Yet after the 15th century, this great engine of empire slowly ground to a halt. The royal court moved south, the meticulous water management fell into disrepair, and the jungle began its patient reclamation, wrapping stone gods in the roots of towering trees. Its abandonment was not a single event, but a slow, complex unraveling woven from several threads. The very water network that gave it life may have become its vulnerability. Centuries of sediment buildup and deforestation could have clogged the canals, making the system prone to failure. At the same time, a profound religious shift was underway, as the state religion transitioned from the god-king ideology of Hinduism to the more individual, monastic path of Theravada Buddhism. This spiritual change may have lessened the imperative to maintain the grandiose temple infrastructure and the royal cult it supported. External pressures mounted too, with the rising power of the Ayutthaya kingdom to the west applying military and economic strain. Compounding all of this, scientists studying tree rings have found evidence of severe and prolonged droughts in the region during the 14th and 15th centuries, followed by periods of intense monsoon flooding. These climatic extremes would have been catastrophic for a water management system already under stress, potentially causing crop failures and social upheaval. The story of Angkor's end is a tapestry where environmental strain, cultural transformation, and political change are all interwoven. It teaches us that a civilization's greatest strength, in this case its mastery of water, can over centuries become its most critical point of failure when the world around it begins to change. The silent stone walls of Angkor find a stark parallel on the other side of the world, carved not into jungle but into the sheer cliffs of the American Southwest. High on the Colorado Plateau, a civilization known as the ancestral Pueblones created a breathtaking urban landscape in one of the most challenging environments imaginable. For generations, they built their homes not on the open mesa tops, but tucked into the protective alcoves of canyon walls. The cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde, with their multi-story towers, circular ceremonial rooms called kivas, and intricate masonry, represent a pinnacle of adaptation. These were not primitive shelters, but sophisticated apartment complexes, communities that thrived for centuries by mastering dryl and farming, storing precious water, and building a rich spiritual life connected to the land. Then, around 1300 CE, every single one of these cliffside villages was completely vacated. The ladders were pulled up, the hearths grew cold, and a profound silence settled over the stone cities. This was not an isolated event. Mesa Verde was part of a much larger regional exodus, a time when the entire Four Corners area, home to tens of thousands of people, saw its communities disperse. Why would a society that had so brilliantly conquered such a harsh landscape choose to leave it behind? The leading explanation points to a force even greater than human ingenuity, a prolonged megadrought. Tree ring data reveals a devastating period of aridity that gripped the region for decades, a drought so severe it would have crippled the already precarious agriculture, dried up springs, and made life unsustainable for such a concentrated population. This environmental stress likely triggered a cascade of other problems. Centuries of intensive farming and gathering may have depleted local resources like timber and game. As conditions worsened, the close quarter living in the cliff dwellings could have fueled social tensions and discord, challenging the communal bonds that held society together. Some researchers suggest that religious or cultural beliefs may have also played a role, with spiritual leaders perhaps interpreting the drought as a sign that the connection to that specific place had been broken. Yet despite these compelling theories, the precise reason for the final, definitive departure remains a subject of deep archaeological debate. There is no evidence of invasion or warfare. The abandonment appears to have been an organized, if difficult, decision. The people did not vanish, they migrated, likely south and east, joining or forming new Pueblo communities. The mystery of Mesa Verde, then, is not a mystery of disappearance, but one of profound transformation. It asks us to consider the moment a community looks at the home it built with such skill and determination, and makes the collective choice that survival means walking away, carrying their culture and identity with them into an uncertain future. The cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde were a testament to endurance, but in the humid jungles of Guatemala, a different kind of urban power reached for the sky. Tikal was a titan of the Maya world, a city-state whose influence echoed across Central America for centuries. Its heart was the Great Plaza, flanked by immense limestone temples that pierced the jungle canopy. Temple 4, rising over 200 feet, remains one of the tallest pre-Columbian structures in the Americas. At its peak around 700 to 800 CE, Tikal was a bustling metropolis, home to an estimated 100,000 people within its urban and suburban sprawl. Its rulers, known as Holy Lords, commanded armies, orchestrated elaborate ceremonies, and oversaw a thriving economy built on trade in jade, obsidian, feathers, and cacao. This was a center of astronomical knowledge, artistic achievement, and profound spiritual power. Then, during the 9th century, this mighty engine of civilization began to stutter and fail. The practice of erecting carved stone monuments, known as stelae, to commemorate royal events and calendar cycles ceased. The grand palaces were no longer expanded, and the great temples saw their final ceremonies. The city's population dwindled, and the jungle, once held at bay by countless hands, began its slow, relentless reconquest. Tikal's story is a central chapter in the broader Maya collapse, a period when many of the great southern lowland cities were abandoned. Why did this happen? The answer is not a single cause, but a perfect storm of pressures that overwhelmed a sophisticated society. Decades of intense warfare between rival city-states like Calakmul and Tikal drained resources and destabilized the region. The city's own success likely led to overpopulation, straining the local environment, to feed its people and to burn limestone for plaster for its endless construction projects. Vast tracts of forest were cleared. This deforestation, researchers suggest, may have reduced local rainfall through a process called transpiration, contributing to severe, multi-generational droughts confirmed by lake sediment cores. A ruling class focused on monumental projects and inter-city conflict may have lost the faith of the people when the rains failed and harvests withered. The exact sequence of events, the final trigger that made the people of Tikal decide to leave their stone giants behind, remains locked within the silent ruins. Was it a failed harvest that sparked rebellion? Was it a final, lost battle that broke the royal lineage's authority? The evidence points to an intertwining of environmental hardship and human strife, a reminder that even the most celestial of kingdoms is built upon the fragile earth. Yet not all Maya cities were giants like Tikal. In the misty foothills of Chiapas, Mexico, Palenque unfolded as a masterpiece of grace and intellect, smaller in scale but breathtaking in its artistry. This city reached its golden age under the rule of Kayanish Janab Pakal, known as Pakal the Great, who reigned for 68 years in the 7th century. Under his vision, Palenque became a canvas of exquisite limestone reliefs, elegant temple pyramids, and sophisticated aqueducts that channeled spring water through the city center. Its most famous structure, the Temple of the Inscriptions, houses Pakal's own resting place, a crypt deep within the pyramid that revealed a wealth of knowledge about Maya cosmology and royal lineage. This was a city of thinkers and artists, a place where astronomy and narrative fused in stone. And yet, its story also ends in silence. The last dated monument from Palenque corresponds to the year 799, just a few decades after Tikal's own decline. Like its larger neighbor, Palenque was gradually abandoned, its palaces left empty and its plazas slowly buried under a blanket of vines and soil. Its location in the western Maya lowlands may have exposed it to unique vulnerabilities. While drought certainly strained the region, Palenque's sophisticated water system, fed by perennial springs, might have initially insulated it. However, some researchers suggest that the very source of its wealth, its position on key trade routes, could have become its weakness. If those economic networks shifted or collapsed due to turmoil elsewhere in the Maya world, Palenque's prosperity would have evaporated. Furthermore, local environmental strain is still a strong possibility. Even the best engineered water channels can fail if a changing climate alters rainfall patterns or if the surrounding hillsides are deforested, causing springs to dry up. There is no evidence of a destructive invasion. Instead, the people seem to have simply departed, leaving their sculpted gods and kings to the whispers of the jungle. The mystery of Palenque's end is particularly poignant because its history is so vividly recorded in its art. We know the names of its rulers, the dates of their triumphs, and the details of their beliefs. Yet that detailed record stops, and the final chapter, the reason the last citizen walked down the hillside for good, remains an eloquent blank space in the stone library they left behind. While Palenque's story fades with its final inscription, another Maya city's end is written in stone with startling clarity. Nestled in a lush valley in modern Honduras, Copán was renowned not for towering temples, but for its breathtaking sculptural artistry. Its rulers were patrons of an extraordinary artistic tradition, filling the city with intricately carved stelae depicting themselves in elaborate ritual attire, and commissioning what is known as the hieroglyphic stairway, the longest known Maya text, a monumental staircase inscribed with over 2,000 glyphs recounting the city's dynastic history. This was a place of deep learning and aesthetic refinement, a civilization that celebrated its identity through stone. For centuries, the dynasty founded by the ruler Yaxcayuc Mo in 426 CE presided over this cultural flowering. Yet this long era of stability and artistic achievement came to a jarring halt. The historical record in stone stops abruptly in the early 9th century. The last dated monument at Copán is from 822, and it commemorates not a triumph but the end of a royal lineage. After this, the chisels fell silent. The evidence points not to a slow fade but to a rapid unraveling. Archaeological work in the Copán Valley reveals a society pushed to a breaking point. The valley itself, while beautiful, is relatively small and enclosed. Centuries of intensive agriculture to support a growing urban population likely led to severe soil exhaustion and deforestation on the surrounding hillsides. This ecological strain would have made the city acutely vulnerable to any climatic shifts, such as the regional droughts affecting other Maya centers. The final ruler, Ugarit, appears to have presided over this period of crisis. Some researchers interpret the archaeological record as suggesting a possible loss of faith in the ruling family's divine authority, perhaps culminating in internal unrest or a withdrawal of support by the broader population. The grand artistic projects ceased because the social order that funded and demanded them had collapsed. Unlike some cities where people lingered, Copán's core seems to have been largely abandoned by the mid-9th century. Its story adds a critical, vivid piece to the puzzle of the Maya collapse. Here was a city that documented its own glory with unparalleled detail, only for that record to end mid-sentence. The silence that followed the last carved glyph speaks volumes about a society that mastered art and inscription, but could not inscribe a solution to the environmental and social pressures closing in on its secluded valley. The artistic silence of Copán gives way to a different kind of grandeur, one of overwhelming scale and cosmic alignment. In the highlands of central Mexico, long before the Aztecs named it the City of the Gods, Teotihuacan rose as the undisputed metropolis of the ancient Americas. At its zenith around 450 CE, it was a meticulously planned urban giant, home to perhaps 125,000 people. Its heart was the vast Avenue of the Dead, a central axis flanked by monumental pyramids that seemed to touch the heavens. The Pyramid of the Sun, a colossal structure of nearly 250 feet, and the slightly smaller Pyramid of the Moon anchored a city designed as a physical model of the universe itself. This was not merely a political capital, it was a religious and economic powerhouse whose cultural influence, from its distinctive art style to its architectural innovations, stretched across Mesoamerica. For centuries, it thrived as a cosmopolitan hub, a place where different ethnic groups lived in distinct districts, united under a powerful yet mysterious ruling authority whose identity remains unknown. They left no royal tombs or inscribed portraits. Then, in the 6th century, this immense order shattered. Around 550 to 600 CE, a wave of intense, targeted fire swept through the city's ceremonial core. The great temples and palaces along the Avenue of the Dead were systematically set ablaze. The evidence is stark: melted adobe, soot-blackened stones, and a pattern of destruction that suggests not an accident, but a deliberate, symbolic act of erasure. Following this conflagration, Teotihuacan entered a rapid and irreversible decline. Its population plummeted and its influence evaporated, leaving only a shell that would later awe the Aztecs. What could cause such a catastrophic and focused end for the continent's greatest city? The leading theories point to profound internal strife. One compelling idea is a popular uprising against the ruling elite. Centuries of rigid social hierarchy and the immense labor required to build the pyramids may have bred deep-seated resentment. If the ruling class, perhaps a council of priests or anonymous lords, lost its divine mandate in the eyes of the people due to famine, drought, or simply the weight of their demands, the result could have been a violent revolution that specifically targeted the symbols of their power along the sacred avenue. Alternatively, some scholars point to the possibility of an invasion by outside groups, perhaps from the city's own militarized periphery or rival states, who sought to topple the giant. Yet the precise, symbolic nature of the burning argues against a random sack. The most haunting possibility involves a catastrophic ecological trigger. Tree ring data from the region indicates a period of severe drought in the 6th century, which would have led to crop failure and famine. Such a crisis could have been the spark that ignited long-smoldering social tensions, turning desperation into a fury directed at the rulers who are believed to control the natural world. The true cause remains one of archaeology's great enigmas. The startling evidence on the Street of the Dead tells us the end was violent and deliberate, but it does not reveal who held the torches or what final injustice or disaster made them feel it was the only option left. Teotihuacan's fall is a reminder that even the most divinely ordered city is built upon a foundation of human consent, a foundation that can, under immense pressure, combust. The fiery collapse of Teotihuacan stands in stark contrast to a city whose end was not destruction, but a slow, gentle burial. In the foothills of the Ouras Mountains in modern Algeria, the Roman city of Timgad was a masterpiece of imperial confidence. Founded around 100 CE by the Emperor Trajan, it was built as a colony for retired legionaries, a perfect square of urban order imposed upon the North African landscape. Its design was the classic Roman grid, centered on a grand forum, a theater, and the elegant Cardo and Decumanus streets intersecting at the heart of the city. For centuries, Timgad thrived as a prosperous agricultural and trade hub, its libraries and bathhouses symbols of Roman civilization flourishing far from Rome itself. An inscription found there perfectly captures its spirit of secure prosperity. It reads, "To hunt, bathe, play games, and laugh, this is to live." Yet this vision of permanence would not last. The city's decline began with the political fragmentation of the Western Roman Empire. The Vandal conquest of North Africa in the 5th century disrupted the administrative and economic systems that sustained cities like Timgad. Later, the Arab-Muslim expansion into the region in the 7th century introduced a new political and cultural order, one in which this classical Roman urban model no longer held central importance. But Timgad was not destroyed in these transitions. Instead, it experienced a gradual, relentless draining of its life force. The complex irrigation systems that turned the surrounding fields green fell into disrepair, likely due to a combination of neglect and a changing climate that pushed the Sahara Desert northward. This desertification of the agricultural lands would have crippled the local economy. At the same time, the long-distance trade networks that once connected Timgad to the Mediterranean world collapsed or rerouted, isolating the city. Regional insecurity made life in a large, exposed urban center increasingly precarious compared to smaller, more defensible settlements. By the 8th century, the process was complete. The last inhabitant simply left. What followed was not ruin but preservation. The encroaching sands of the Sahara slowly, patiently, filled the streets and covered the buildings, sealing the city in a dry, silent tomb. For over 1,000 years, Timgad slept, its perfect grid and proud inscriptions hidden from view. Its eventual rediscovery by archaeologists revealed a time capsule of Roman life, frozen not by a sudden catastrophe, but by abandonment. The story of Timgad is a different kind of mystery. It asks us how a city built as a permanent symbol of order can be undone not by fire or war, but by the slow-motion unraveling of the very connections, economic, environmental, and political, that gave it purpose. Its silent, sand-filled streets are a monument to the fragility of networks, reminding us that a city is not just its stones, but its place in a living, changing world. The majestic ruins of Timgad were preserved by sand, but another desert city met a far more dramatic fate. In the heart of the Syrian desert, an oasis emerged as a glittering nexus of worlds. Palmyra was not born of an empire's decree, but of geography's gift. Positioned between the Mediterranean coast and the Euphrates River, it became the indispensable way station for caravans moving silk, spices, and incense along the Silk Road. This strategic location bred immense wealth, which the Pomerans channeled into a breathtaking fusion of architectural styles. Grand colonnaded avenues, Roman-style theaters, and distinctive tower tombs rose from the sands, creating a skyline that blended Greco-Roman, Persian, and local Arab influences into something uniquely its own. For centuries, Palmyra thrived as a semi-autonomous hub, balancing diplomacy between the Roman and Parthian empires to protect its lucrative trade. Then, in the 3rd century, this wealthy merchant city dared to dream of empire itself. Following a period of Roman instability, Palmyra's brilliant and ambitious ruler, Queen Zenobia, seized the moment. Declaring independence, her forces marched to conquer Egypt and much of Anatolia, carving out a short-lived Pomeran empire that directly challenged Rome's supremacy. This bold gamble for ultimate power could not stand. The Roman Emperor Aurelian retaliated with devastating force. In the year 273, after a decisive siege, Roman legions sacked the city. Zenobia was captured and paraded through Rome in golden chains, and Palmyra's moment as a political powerhouse was brutally extinguished. While the city was not completely destroyed, it was irrevocably broken. It was refortified as a minor Roman garrison town, a shadow of its former cosmopolitan self. Yet the final abandonment of Palmyra was not the result of that single military catastrophe. It was a slower death by economic strangulation. In the centuries that followed, the Roman and later Byzantine empires reorganized trade routes for security and efficiency, often favoring sea lanes and more northerly paths. The overland caravan traffic that was Palmyra's lifeblood gradually dwindled to a trickle. Compounding this, increasing regional insecurity made desert travel more perilous. Without its commercial reason for being, the great city had no foundation. The magnificent buildings, already damaged, were not maintained. The population slowly dispersed to more secure and economically viable areas. What remained was a skeleton of stone in the desert, a haunting monument to vanished commerce and ambition. For over a millennium, Palmyra stood in majestic isolation, known mainly to local Bedouin tribes, its grand columns casting long shadows over empty sands until European travelers rediscovered it in the 17th century. Its ruins tell a dual tale of audacity and consequence, the story of a city that rose to dizzying heights by mastering the flow of wealth, and then faded into silence when that flow was redirected by the changing currents of history. The ambitious rise and fall of Palmyra is a story written in trade and conquest, but another ancient capital's end is a chapter lost in fire and clay. Hattusa was the formidable nerve center of the Hittite Empire, a superpower that rivaled ancient Egypt for dominance over the Near East. Perched on a rocky plateau in central Anatolia, its defenses were a statement of imperial might. Cyclopean stone walls constructed from massive, irregular blocks snaked for miles around the city. Its gates were guarded by colossal stone lions and sphinxes, and the grand entrance known as the Lion Gate still projects an aura of intimidating power. Within these walls, a sophisticated society administered an empire through a complex bureaucracy, its laws and diplomacy recorded in detail. Then, around 1200 BCE, this great capital met a violent and definitive end. The city was consumed by a tremendous fire so intense it vitrified stone and baked clay tablets into ceramic. In the aftermath, Hattusa was not just damaged, it was utterly abandoned, its streets left empty and its palaces left to crumble. This event was not isolated. Hattusa's fall coincided with the cataclysmic Late Bronze Age collapse, a period when interconnected civilizations across the eastern Mediterranean, from the Mycenaeans in Greece to the New Kingdom in Egypt, experienced widespread collapse, famine, and the disappearance of centralized authority. So what force could topple such a heavily fortified imperial capital? Historians grapple with several compelling theories, each pointing to a different kind of vulnerability. One long-standing explanation points to invasion by the mysterious confederation known as the Sea Peoples, marauding groups referenced in Egyptian texts who are blamed for destabilizing the entire region. Yet, archaeologists find little clear evidence of their specific assault on Hattusa's walls. Another possibility is internal rebellion, an uprising by subject peoples or a crippling civil war that fractured the empire from within, leaving the capital undefended. Perhaps the most intriguing theory is a natural disaster. The region is seismically active, and a catastrophic earthquake could have shattered the city's infrastructure and water supply, triggering a societal breakdown that made recovery impossible. The haunting irony is that the very fire that destroyed Hattusa also preserved its voice. Tens of thousands of clay tablets, baked hard in the conflagration, survived in the ruins. They contain treaties, legal codes, and diplomatic correspondence, including the famous peace treaty with Egypt after the Battle of Kadesh. But these meticulous records are administrative. They are the paperwork of a functioning state. They provide no narrative of the empire's death throes, no final report on the crisis. The last tablets offer business as usual, then silence. The mystery, therefore, is profound. We have the detailed life of the Hittite Empire preserved in clay, but its final, fiery breath left no explanation. The empty sockets of the stone lions stare out from the ruins, guarding a secret they were never meant to tell. The baked clay tablets of Hattusa recorded an empire's life, but in another royal archive, a civilization's final cries for help were preserved in desperation. On the coast of modern Syria, the port city of Ugarit was the beating heart of international commerce in the Late Bronze Age. This was not a fortress city, but a vibrant, cosmopolitan hub where merchants from Egypt, Anatolia, Cyprus, and Mesopotamia mingled in its harbors and warehouses. Its wealth was built on trade, and its influence stemmed from diplomacy and a prolific scribble tradition that produced literature, including early alphabetic cuneiform texts. Ugarit thrived as a critical node in a stable, interconnected world. Then, with shocking suddenness around 1190 to 1185 BCE, that world ended. Ugarit was violently and completely destroyed, its palaces and temples burned to the ground, never to be rebuilt. The city's fate is not a silent mystery, however. In its ruined archives, archaeologists found a series of haunting clay tablets. These were the last diplomatic correspondences, frantic letters sent to allies and superiors. One, addressed to the king of Alashia, Cyprus, pleads for help, stating that the enemy's ships have already been sighted at sea. Another letter, perhaps even more telling, describes a dire situation on land, reporting that the city's own troops and chariots are deployed far to the south, leaving Ugarit itself vulnerable. The writer speaks of a looming famine as the enemy is burning the crops. These are not historical accounts, they are real-time dispatches from the edge of oblivion. The destroyers are often identified in modern scholarship with the enigmatic sea peoples, the same shadowy confederation implicated in the wider collapse. The archaeological evidence is clear. A layer of ash and destruction seals the city's glorious past. Yet for all the vivid panic in those final letters, key questions persist. Who exactly were these attackers on ships? Were they a unified naval force, or disparate groups of raiders and migrants exploiting a period of profound weakness? Was the attack on Ugarit a cause of the wider collapse, or a symptom of it? The city's own admitted vulnerability, with its military absent, suggests a larger system already unraveling. The pleas for help went unanswered because it seems there was no one left who could answer. The kingdom of Alashia was likely fighting for its own survival. The story of Ugarit's end is uniquely poignant because we hear its voice in its final moments. We feel the urgency of the scribe's stylus pressing into the clay. But those voices fall silent mid-sentence, and the fire that preserved their last words also consumed the city that gave them life. It stands as a powerful testament to how quickly a sophisticated, connected society can vanish when the networks of trade and mutual aid that sustain it suddenly snap. The final, desperate letters from Ugarit were written in a world already coming apart, and that same wave of collapse soon reached the shores of Greece. Here, the legends spoke of a golden age of heroes, of Agamemnon and the Trojan War, and at the center of those legends stood a city of stone and gold. Mycenae was the formidable heart of a warrior culture, its power proclaimed by the massive cyclopean walls guarding the Lion Gate. This was the command center of the Mycenaean civilization, a network of palace fortresses that dominated the Greek mainland and the Aegean Sea from around 1600 to 1100 BCE. The Mycenaean rulers were both warlords and administrators, their wealth evident in the stunning gold death masks and intricate weaponry found in the royal shaft graves. They controlled a complex, centralized economy from their hilltop palaces, using the Linear B script to meticulously track the distribution of grain, oil, and textiles to their subjects and soldiers. This was a society organized for power and production, a glittering, martial kingdom that seemed carved from the very mountains it ruled. Then, around 1200 BCE, the lights began to go out. One by one, the great palaces Mycenae, Turin's, Pylos were destroyed, often by fire. The centralized bureaucracy collapsed, the use of the Linear B script vanished entirely, and Greece plunged into a period often called the Greek Dark Ages, a time of depopulation, poverty, and lost literacy that lasted for centuries. Mycenae itself was largely abandoned, its mighty walls enclosing only a shadow of its former glory. Why did this happen? The theories are as layered as the city's own ruins. One long-standing idea points to invasion, specifically by the Dorians, a group from northern Greece mentioned in later tradition. This Dorian invasion hypothesis suggests a wave of newcomers overthrew the established Mycenaean kingdoms. However, archaeological evidence for a sudden, violent influx of a new culture is sparse, leading many scholars to look inward. Another compelling theory is systemic collapse. The Mycenaean palatial economy was a tightly wound machine, dependent on exacting tribute and redistribution. A series of poor harvests caused by regional drought, a concept supported by some climate data, could have triggered famine and broken the people's faith in the ruling elite's ability to provide. This internal strain may have sparked civil wars or popular uprisings that burned the palaces, the very symbols of a failing system. The loss of the linear B script is a critical part of the mystery. With its disappearance, we lost the administrative voice of the civilization. The clay tablets that recorded tax receipts and inventory lists were not meant for history. They offer no poetry of decline, no explanation for the final crisis. They simply stop. The silence that followed was so profound it allowed the historical events of the Bronze Age to dissolve into the myths of the Iron Age, transforming real kings like Agamemnon into the stuff of epic poetry. The true cause of Mycenae's fall likely lies in a fatal combination: environmental stress that weakened the economic foundation, leading to social unrest that shattered the political order. The great fortifications, built to withstand any army, could not protect the city from the slow unraveling of the world it had built. While Mycenae's walls crumbled from within, another palace on the island of Crete tells a story of cultural absorption and final, unanswered questions. Knossos was the legendary heart of the Minoan civilization, Europe's first advanced society. Its sprawling, multi-story palace complex was a marvel of design, a labyrinthine structure with intricate frescoes depicting graceful bull leapers, lively processions, and a reverence for nature. This was a society renowned for its art, maritime trade, and apparent lack of fortifications, suggesting a different kind of power based on commerce and culture rather than sheer military might. The Minoans faced an earlier, colossal disaster, the catastrophic eruption of the Thera volcano around 1600 BCE. While this event devastated settlements on nearby islands and likely caused tsunamis and climate disruption, Knossos itself survived, though in a weakened state. In the power vacuum that followed, a new influence began to seep into its corridors. The mainland Mycenaeans, those warlords from places like Mycenae, gradually extended their control over Crete. By the 14th century BCE, Knossos showed clear signs of Mycenaean presence, from changes in burial practices to the adoption of the linear B script for their own administrative purposes. The Minoan palace was now under new management. Then, around 1380 BCE, a great fire swept through the palace of Knossos, causing catastrophic damage. While parts of the site remained occupied for a time, the palace's central function as a political and ceremonial heart was extinguished. By 1100 BCE, in the wake of the wider Bronze Age collapse, the site was largely abandoned. So what caused the final, fiery end for this twice-resilient center? The evidence invites several interpretations. One possibility is a straightforward Mycenaean conquest, a violent takeover by the new overlords that resulted in the palace's destruction. However, some scholars point to an internal revolt by the local Minoan population against their Mycenaean rulers, a final act of resistance that consumed the palace in flames. Perhaps the most compelling theory connects Knossos to the larger regional unraveling. As the interconnected trade networks of the Bronze Age shattered and the Mycenaean palatial system on the mainland itself collapsed, Knossos would have been cut off from its economic and political support. The palace, already a hybrid institution, may have simply become unsustainable. The fire could have been the result of an attack by seaborne raiders exploiting the chaos, or even an accident during a time of social breakdown when no one could muster the resources to repair it. The true cause remains debated, but the consequence is stark. The end of Knossos did not just mark the destruction of a palace, it signaled the final fade of Minoan culture into obscurity. Europe's first advanced civilization, with its vibrant art and unique spirit, was ultimately absorbed and then extinguished by the turbulent currents of a collapsing age, leaving behind a labyrinth of ruins and a legend of a minotaur that outlived the people who built it. The volcanic fury that reshaped the Aegean world left one city perfectly preserved in its final quiet moment. On the island now known as Santorini, the settlement of Akrotiri was not a Minoan palace, but a thriving, sophisticated port town, a vibrant outpost of that seafaring culture. Its multi-story buildings, some 3 stories high, were adorned with breathtaking frescoes of antelopes, fishermen, and flotillas of ships, capturing a society deeply connected to the sea and nature. The streets were laid out with an advanced drainage system, and homes stored imported goods from across the Mediterranean. This was a prosperous, artistic, and technologically advanced community. Then, around 1600 BCE, the island's volcano, Thera, awoke. The ground began to shake with intense earthquakes, a violent warning of the cataclysm to come. But here lies a crucial distinction in the story of Akrotiri's end. The city was not suddenly smothered by ash while people slept or went about their day. The archaeological record tells a different, more deliberate tale. The evidence points to a phased, organized evacuation. There are no human remains found in the streets or homes, no valuables left in haste. The people had time to gather their most precious possessions and leave. They even took steps to secure their town, propping up damaged walls with timber supports in a clear effort to stabilize buildings after the initial quakes. This was not a panicked flight, but a managed retreat from a place they clearly hoped to return to. They succeeded in saving themselves from the immediate disaster. Then the volcano delivered its final, apocalyptic blow. A colossal eruption, one of the largest in human history, buried the entire town under dozens of feet of volcanic ash and pumice, sealing it like a time capsule. The mystery of Akrotiri, therefore, is not one of a tragic, instantaneous end, but of a successful escape that leads to a profound silence. Where did this entire population go? They left their reinforced homes, their beautiful art on the walls, and sailed away from the trembling island. But they left no clear trail in the archaeological record of the region. Did they sail to Crete, only to be absorbed into a Minoan society that was itself soon struggling in the eruption's aftermath? Did they disperse in smaller groups to various coastal settlements, their identity blending into other cultures? Or did their fleet, fleeing the cataclysm, meet another fate at sea? We simply do not know. The evacuated people of Akrotiri vanish from history after their orderly exodus, becoming one of archaeology's most haunting success stories. They read the warnings of the earth correctly and acted to preserve their community, yet their ultimate destination remains a blank page, a reminder that survival itself is not always the final chapter. Far to the east, where the Silk Road skirted the edge of a vast and unforgiving sea of sand, the city of Nia once bloomed like a mirage. This ancient oasis settlement, located on the southern branch of the great trade route in what is now China's Taklamakan Desert, was a vital way station for caravans carrying silk, spices, and ideas between China and Central Asia. For centuries, it was a place of lush orchards and cultivated fields, its life sustained by the waters of the Nia River flowing down from the distant Kunlun Mountains. The arid climate that surrounded it became an unexpected guardian, preserving its wooden architecture, vivid textiles, and even ancient documents written in the Kharosthi script in a state of remarkable detail. Walking through its remains, archaeologists found evidence of a comfortable, multicultural life, with homes featuring elaborately carved wooden pillars and residents who practiced Buddhism, as indicated by the stupas found among the dwellings. Then, sometime between the 4th and 5th centuries, the lifeblood of this green island in the sand simply stopped flowing. The city was carefully, orderly abandoned. Homes were left with utensils still in place, and official documents were stored away as if the people intended to return, but they never did. The desert sands moved in, sealing the city in a silent, dry tomb for over a millennium. What could cause an entire community to walk away from a home they had so carefully built and maintained? The prevailing theory points not to war or political upheaval, but to a slow, environmental siege. The Taklamakan is a desert of shifting dunes, a landscape in constant, slow motion. Researchers believe the course of the Nia River, the sole source of water for the oasis, may have gradually changed over time, diverted by tectonic activity or the relentless accumulation of sand. Alternatively, the dunes themselves may have advanced, physically blocking the river's path to the settlement, or burying the irrigation canals that distributed its water to the fields. Without water, the orchards would have withered, the crops would have failed, and the very reason for the city's existence, its ability to support life and resupply caravans, would have evaporated. The abandonment of Nia is a profound lesson in environmental fragility. It demonstrates how a civilization's survival can hinge on a single, tenuous geographic thread. The people of Nia were not defeated by an army, but by the slow, inexorable shift of a river and the creeping advance of sand dunes they could no longer hold back. Their story is a quiet echo of many we have heard, a reminder that the desert gives life only as long as the water flows, and when it stops, even the most vibrant oasis must be surrendered to the silence. Loulan's story is one of water lost to the desert wind. This kingdom, situated near the Great Salt Lake known as Lop Nur, was a linchpin on the eastern stretches of the Silk Road. For the Han Dynasty, it was a crucial and sometimes troublesome frontier outpost, mentioned in their records as a place to be courted and controlled, for whoever held Loulan controlled a vital gateway. Caravans departing from the Chinese heartland would rest and resupply here before braving the terrifying Taklamakan Desert to the west. It was a place of strategic consequence, a bustling oasis where languages and goods mingled under a relentless sun. Then, by the 4th century of the Common Era, the kingdom of Loulan vanished from history. Its fate is a textbook example of environmental determinism, a slow-motion crisis written not in battle reports, but in the drying beds of rivers. The city's life was tethered to two sources, the waters of the Tarim River and the expansive Lop Nur Lake into which it flowed. Over centuries, a profound change occurred. The Tarim River began to shift its course, a common phenomenon in such flat, sandy landscapes. At the same time, the climate of the entire Tarim Basin grew increasingly arid. The combined effect was catastrophic for Loulan. Lop Nur, that vast terminal lake, began to shrink and retreat, its life-giving waters pulling back like a tide that would never return. The Tarim River's flow to the oasis dwindled, and the intricate irrigation canals that fed Loulan's fields and orchards ran dry. Without water, agriculture became impossible. Without agriculture, the city could not feed itself or supply passing caravans. The very reason for its existence evaporated. Archaeological evidence paints a clear picture of a gradual, inescapable stranding. As the desert encroached, sandstorms would have become more frequent and severe, slowly burying streets and choking the air. The decision to abandon Loulan was not a choice, but a grim necessity for survival. The people likely dispersed to other, more reliable oases along the river's new course, leaving their homes to be swallowed by the dunes. The mystery of Loulan is not a whodunit, but a how it happened, a detailed case study in the fragility of human settlement against the immense, patient power of a changing climate. Its silent ruins, rediscovered millennia later, stand as a stark monument to a simple, devastating truth: a city cannot outlast its last drop of water. A city of sandstone dreams rises from the plains of northern India, a monument to one emperor's grand vision and fleeting triumph. Emperor Akbar, the greatest of the Mughal rulers, commissioned Fatehpur Sikri in 1571, following a spiritual prophecy that foretold the birth of an heir. Built on a rocky ridge near a revered Sufi saint's dwelling, the new capital was a breathtaking fusion of architectural genius and symbolic intent. Its red sandstone palaces, audience halls, and courtyards blended Persian, Indian, and Central Asian styles into a harmonious whole, a physical manifestation of Akbar's own policy of religious tolerance and cultural synthesis. The Grand Buland Darwaza, or Gate of Magnificence, towering over the complex, commemorated a military victory in Gujarat. For about 14 years, this splendid city hummed as the nerve center of a vast empire, a place of courtly intrigue, philosophical debate, and immense power. Then, in 1585, Akbar and his entire court simply walked away, leaving the magnificent capital to the pigeons and the dust. Why would an emperor abandon a city built as the ultimate symbol of his reign? The most enduring and practical explanation is a crisis of water. Fatehpur Sikri's location, while spiritually significant, was geographically challenging. It relied on an artificial lake and a complex system of reservoirs and tanks to collect monsoon rains. Historical accounts and modern studies suggest this water supply failed. The reservoir may have been poorly engineered, or the local water table may have fallen due to overuse or climatic shifts, leaving the city's wells and tanks dry. A capital of thousands with its royal household, army, and administrative staff simply could not function without a reliable water source, yet some historians see a deeper political logic at work. Akbar was a master strategist, constantly consolidating his rule. By 1585, his military focus had shifted decisively to the northwest to confront threats in Afghanistan and secure the empire's volatile frontier. Remaining at Fatehpur Sikri, far to the south, placed him at a logistical disadvantage. Abandoning his showpiece capital may have been a cold, calculated decision to move the imperial base closer to the action, first to Lahore and later to Agra. In this view, the water shortage, while real, provided a convenient public reason for a relocation driven by the necessities of empire. The city's fate is a poignant duality, a story of both environmental vulnerability and imperial pragmatism. Its silent, sun-baked courtyards stand as a beautiful, unanswered question, a reminder that even the most glorious of visions must bow to the practical demands of water and war. The sudden power of nature is not confined to ancient history. In the late 20th century, a modern capital faced a similar, unstoppable force. Plymouth, the charming capital of the Caribbean island of Montserrat, was a bustling administrative and commercial center, its streets lined with shops, government buildings, and homes overlooking the sparkling sea. Life here followed the gentle rhythm of island time, a world away from the idea of sudden catastrophe. That all changed in July 1995, when the long-dormant Soufriere Hills volcano awoke. What began as a series of small earthquakes and steam vents escalated into a full-scale volcanic crisis. Over the next 2 years, a relentless onslaught of eruptions rained ash upon the city. Then, in August 1997, a devastating pyroclastic flow, a superheated avalanche of gas, rock, and ash racing down the mountain at incredible speed, engulfed much of Plymouth, burying it under feet of volcanic material. The city was not just damaged, it was rendered permanently uninhabitable, a modern-day Pompeii. The entire southern half of the island, including the capital, was declared an exclusion zone, forcing the swift evacuation of its residents. Here, the reason for abandonment is starkly clear, a physical impossibility of remaining. Yet the mystery Plymouth presence is of a different kind. It is a perfectly preserved time capsule of the 1990s, frozen in a moment of emergency. Cars sit half-buried in ash outside banks. Desks in government offices remain cluttered with paperwork from the day everyone fled, and store shelves hold products from a world that has since moved on. This creates a haunting paradox, a city abandoned not by the slow unraveling of trade or the fading of an empire, but by a single, definitive geological event captured with modern clarity. Its silent, ash-gray streets offer a rare and sobering opportunity, a chance to see exactly what sudden, forced abandonment looks like in our own time, a powerful reminder that the planet's immense forces remain the ultimate arbiters of where and how we live. The volcanic fires that buried Plymouth are a force of nature, but another town burns from a fire of human making. Centralia, Pennsylvania was a classic American mining town, its identity and economy forged from the rich veins of anthracite coal beneath its streets. For nearly a century, its life followed the rhythm of the mines, a tight-knit community sustained by the hard, black rock. Then, in 1962, a routine municipal cleanup sparked a catastrophe. To clear a landfill for Memorial Day, the town council set a controlled fire, a common practice at the time. This fire, however, did not stay contained. It found its way into an abandoned strip mine, touching an exposed seam of coal, and ignited a subterranean inferno. The ground itself began to burn. At first, the effects were subtle, little more than a strange warmth in the soil and a faint, acrid smell. But the fire was alive, feeding on the immense coal deposits that stretched for miles. It began to spread through the labyrinth of old mining tunnels beneath the town, an unseen dragon sleeping just below the surface. Over the following decades, the true danger surfaced. Toxic gases, including carbon monoxide, began seeping up through the ground into basements and homes. The earth itself became unstable, with dangerous sinkholes and fissures opening without warning as the burning coal turned to ash and collapsed the ground above it. A famous photograph from the early 1980s shows a local highway torn apart by a massive, steaming crack, a graphic illustration of the town being consumed from within. The response was a slow, painful, and permanent evacuation. The government eventually bought out most homes and businesses, relocating families as the situation grew undeniably hazardous. By the turn of the millennium, Centralia was a ghost town. Its streets are now empty grids being reclaimed by forest, punctuated by the eerie sight of steam rising from vents in the ground. Yet, in a strange legal limbo, a handful of residents refused to leave, negotiating an agreement to remain in their homes for as long as they live. They are the last holdouts in a place that officially no longer exists. The fire still burns today, and experts estimate it could continue for another 250 years. There is no viable solution. The cost and complexity of extinguishing a fire across such a vast underground network are simply beyond reach. Centralia's abandonment is not a mystery of why, but a stark lesson in consequence. It is a slow-motion, man-made environmental disaster, a town sacrificed to a fire that cannot be put out, leaving a silent, smoldering maze beneath the feet of the few who remain. Pripyat was a promise of the future. Built from scratch in 1970 to house the elite workers and scientists of the nearby Chernobyl nuclear power plant, it was a showcase of Soviet modernity. This was no simple industrial town. It was a planned city of broad avenues, modernist apartment blocks, and abundant green spaces for its young, educated population, whose average age was only 26. It boasted a cultural palace, a cinema, an amusement park set to open for May Day celebrations, and even a large indoor swimming pool. Life here was vibrant and forward-looking, centered on the pride of operating the most advanced nuclear facility in the world. Then, in the early hours of April 26, 1986, that future shattered. During a late-night safety test, reactor number 4 experienced a catastrophic power surge, leading to a massive steam explosion that blew the 2,000-ton roof off the building and spewed a plume of intensely radioactive material high into the atmosphere. The immediate aftermath was a scene of surreal horror, with firefighters battling blazes in a shower of invisible, lethal particles. For 36 hours, life in Pripyat attempted to continue with a surreal normalcy, its residents unaware of the true danger settling over their city. Then the order came. On the afternoon of April 27th, a fleet of over 1,000 buses rolled into the city. Residents were told to take only essential documents, a few days' worth of food, and to leave everything else behind. They were assured this was a temporary precaution. Within a mere 3 hours, the entire city of nearly 50,000 people was evacuated. They boarded the buses, looked back at their homes, and drove away, never to return. The cause of Pripyat's abandonment is tragically clear: the pervasive, invisible threat of radiation that made the city uninhabitable for centuries. Yet the mystery it presents is of a different, deeply haunting kind. It is the mystery of suspended life. Unlike ancient ruins worn by time, Pripyat was abandoned in an instant, a fully furnished modern city frozen in the spring of 1986. Classrooms hold open textbooks and children's drawings pinned to walls. Hospital beds are still made, toys are scattered in playgrounds, and the Ferris wheel in the never-opened amusement park stands as an iconic monument to a celebration that never happened. The silence here is not the quiet of antiquity, but the eerie stillness of a present moment abruptly severed. It is a uniquely powerful and unsettling snapshot, a place where the mundane artifacts of daily life have become relics of a single, catastrophic afternoon. Pripyat forces us to confront a modern paradox. Our most advanced technology created a disaster that turned a vibrant city into a time capsule. A stark reminder of how quickly the trajectory of a community can be altered, leaving behind not just empty buildings, but the palpable ghost of an interrupted life. The silent, irradiated streets of Pripyat are a monument to technological failure, but another abandoned place speaks to a different, more human darkness. Oradour-sur-Glane is a village in the rolling countryside of central France. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, the 10th of June, 1944, it was a peaceful, thriving community. Just 4 days after the Allied landings in Normandy, the war felt distant here. Then, a unit of the Waffen-SS division Das Reich surrounded the village. The soldiers ordered all inhabitants to assemble in the central square, ostensibly for an identity check. The men were separated and led into barns and garages. The women and children were taken to the village church. What followed was a systematic and complete atrocity. The men were shot, and the buildings where they were held were set on fire. The church, with the women and children locked inside, was also set ablaze, and grenades were thrown through the windows. In total, 643 people were killed, almost the entire population of Oradour-sur-Glane. The soldiers then looted and burned the rest of the village to the ground, leaving only smoldering stone shells. In this case, the reason for abandonment is horrifically clear, documented by history and surviving witnesses. There is no mystery of cause, only the enduring mystery of human cruelty. The profound significance of Oradour-sur-Glane lies in what happened next. After the war, the French state, under the leadership of Charles de Gaulle, made a solemn decision. The ruins would not be cleared, rebuilt, or reoccupied. A new village would be constructed nearby, but the original Oradour-sur-Glane would be preserved exactly as the soldiers left it, a permanent memorial frozen in its moment of destruction. The rusted skeletons of cars still sit in the streets where they were caught in the attack. The hollow shells of homes and shops stand open to the sky, their contents charred and scattered. A tram line ends abruptly at the edge of the ruins. This is abandonment of an entirely different order. It is not a place deserted by its people through migration, economic collapse, or environmental stress. It is a place where life was forcibly and violently erased, and then intentionally kept empty as a testament. The village is abandoned by life, but it is permanently occupied by memory. Walking its silent, cobbled lanes today is to walk through a raw, open wound in history, a deliberate desertion that serves as a powerful, unsettling classroom. It asks us not to wonder why it was abandoned, but to remember why it must never be forgotten, transforming a site of tragedy into a stark, enduring lesson about the consequences of hatred and the sacred duty of remembrance. On a sun-drenched hillside above Turkey's turquoise coast, the empty windows of Kayaköy stare out like hollow eyes. This town, originally known as Levisi, was for centuries a thriving community of Anatolian Greeks, its stone houses climbing the slope in a harmonious cascade, surrounded by fertile fields and orchards. Life here followed the rhythms of the Eastern Orthodox calendar, centered around its two large churches where generations celebrated, worshipped, and were laid to rest. It was a world unto itself, yet intimately connected to the land. The end of this world came not from environmental collapse or economic failure, but from the stroke of a pen. Following the bitter Greco-Turkish War and the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire, the newly founded Republic of Turkey and the Kingdom of Greece signed the Treaty of Lausanne in 1923. A central provision was a compulsory population exchange, a monumental act of social engineering aimed at creating ethnically homogeneous nation-states. Over 1.5 million people were uprooted, Orthodox Christians from Turkey, including the entire population of Levisi, were to be sent to Greece. Muslims from Greece were to be resettled in Turkey. The residents of Levisi packed what they could carry and left their homes, believing, or perhaps hoping, that Muslims from Greece would soon arrive to take their place, continuing the life of the village. But that replacement never happened. The incoming population assigned these homes found the rocky hillside terrain unsuitable for their own agricultural practices and way of life. They chose to settle instead on the more fertile plains below, and so Levisi, renamed Kayaköy, was left exactly as it was abandoned. Hundreds of stone houses, 2 churches, schools, and fountains, an entire intact community, were simply vacated, a ghost town created not by disaster but by diplomatic decree. Over the decades, roofs collapsed and vegetation crept in, but the skeleton of the town remains, a hauntingly beautiful and melancholy landscape. Kayaköy stands today as a powerful, silent monument to the human cost of political borders redrawn. It is a physical testament to the concept of displaced populations, a place where the story of a community was not ended by time or nature, but was deliberately, permanently paused. Walking its silent streets, one does not see ruins in the ancient sense, but a modern abandonment, a snapshot of 1923 frozen in stone. It asks us to reflect on the immense weight of political decisions and how the maps of nations are often drawn across the hearts of homes. The political borders that emptied Kayaköy created a ghost town of stone, but in the Mediterranean, a different kind of border created a ghost town of glass and concrete. Varosha was the dazzling jewel of Cyprus, a glamorous seaside district in the city of Famagusta. By the early 1970s, it had become a premier tourist destination, its golden beaches lined with sleek, modernist high-rise hotels and apartment blocks. Celebrities and vacationers flocked to its luxury boutiques and vibrant nightlife, a symbol of cosmopolitan prosperity on the island. This glittering era ended with shocking abruptness in the summer of 1974. During the Turkish invasion of Cyprus, which followed a period of intercommunal conflict, advancing Turkish forces captured Famagusta. As they approached Varosha, the entire Greek Cypriot population fled south, fearing for their safety. The Turkish military then took the extraordinary step of sealing off the entire district with barbed wire fences, military checkpoints, and signs warning of a forbidden military zone. In an instant, a bustling resort was transformed into a silent, sealed enclave. For decades now, Varosha has remained exactly as it was abandoned, a place frozen not by environmental change or economic collapse but by political stalemate. Its abandonment is politically enforced, a direct consequence of the unresolved division of the island. This makes it one of the world's most striking and surreal examples of urban desertion. The mystery and haunting allure of Varosha lie in its state of perfect decay. From outside the fences, one can see a snapshot of the 1970s slowly being reclaimed by nature. Hotel lounges still hold furniture from that era, now covered in dust and bird droppings. Cars with vintage designs sit in rusting showrooms. Trees and shrubs have pushed through cracked pavement in the empty streets, and the skeletons of unfinished construction projects stand against the sky. It is a capsule of a specific moment in time, preserved not by intention but by indefinite postponement. The district has become a powerful, tangible symbol of the frozen conflict, a place where the passage of normal time has been suspended by political disagreement. Its silent, crumbling towers serve as a stark reminder of how quickly the trappings of modern life can be rendered obsolete, not by a natural disaster, but by the enduring weight of human division. The beachfront that once echoed with laughter now hears only the wind and the waves, a poignant monument to a paradise interrupted, waiting for a resolution that has never come. On the northern coast of Taiwan, a vision of the future was left to rust. The Sanjai Resort District was conceived in the late 1970s as an ultra-modern vacation destination, a collection of pod-shaped buildings that looked like something from a science fiction film. These striking structures, often described as UFO-like, were colorful, sleek, and utterly unlike anything else in the region. Designed as a luxury pod hotel complex, they promised a futuristic getaway just outside Taipei, a symbol of economic confidence and architectural daring. But the project was plagued with misfortune from the start. During construction, a series of serious workplace accidents occurred, leading to loss of life. These tragic events, combined with ballooning costs and financial mismanagement, brought the ambitious development to a sudden halt. The unfinished pods stood empty, and local rumors began to swirl, suggesting the site was cursed or built on spiritually troubled ground. This blend of genuine financial failure and growing folklore created a perfect storm of dread, ensuring no investor would dare to revive the project. For decades, the colorful pods decayed by the sea, a surreal and haunting landmark of a future that never arrived. They became a powerful local legend, a place spoken of in whispers, their bright colors fading under the salt air. Eventually, the entire site was cleared in the 2000s, the pods demolished to make way for new development. Sanjai's story is a unique modern parable. It shows how the abandonment of a place can be driven not just by economics or engineering, but by the powerful human narratives that attach to tragedy. When a project becomes associated with misfortune and fear, its fate is often sealed as surely as if its foundations had crumbled. The empty coast where it once stood now holds only the memory of those strange, silent pods, a cautionary tale about how quickly a dream of tomorrow can become a ghost story. Rising from the East China Sea like a battleship of concrete, Gunkanjima earned its nickname. This tiny island, officially Hashima, was a fortress of industry built upon a submerged coal seam. To house the miners who worked deep beneath the ocean floor, Mitsubishi constructed an astonishingly dense vertical city. Apartment blocks, some of the first reinforced concrete high-rises in Japan, were crammed onto every inch of the barren rock, connected by narrow alleyways and enclosed corridors. At its peak in 1959, over 5,000 people lived on this speck of land, giving it a population density higher than any city on the planet. Life here was a study in extreme communal living, with schools, shops, a cinema, and even a rooftop garden all contained within the grey walls, while the relentless work of extracting coal powered Japan's post-war economic miracle. Then, with the swiftness of a changing tide, the island's entire purpose vanished. In the early 1970s, as Japan's energy policy decisively shifted from coal to cheaper imported petroleum, the undersea mine became economically obsolete. Mitsubishi announced its closure in January 1974. Within a matter of weeks, the company organized a complete evacuation. Residents packed their personal belongings, boarded boats, and left almost everything else behind, from furniture in apartments to shoes in school hallways. The last citizen departed in April, and the island was sealed shut. What remains is a breathtakingly stark monument to a vanished industrial age. Without maintenance, the salt-laden winds and typhoons have begun a slow, relentless reclamation. Concrete spalls from walls, metal stairways rust into lace, and the geometric grid of empty windows stares out at an empty sea. The suddenness of the departure preserved a perfect snapshot of 1970s Japanese daily life, frozen at the moment the engine stopped. Gunkanjima's silence is not that of ancient mystery, but of recent, deliberate closure. It stands as a powerful, physical symbol of how entire communities and ways of life can be rendered obsolete overnight by the global shift from one energy source to another. The island is a ghost not of people but of the very idea of coal, a haunting and concrete reminder of how economic progress can leave behind entire worlds, perfectly preserved in their final moment. In the heart of the Namib Desert, a Bavarian town once dreamed of diamonds, Kolmanskop was a startling mirage of European ambition. Its ornate German colonial buildings complete with a ballroom, a casino, a hospital with the first X-ray machine in southern Africa, and even an ice factory sprouting from the scorching sands. This was a town of immense and sudden wealth, built by German settlers after a railway worker found a glittering stone in 1908, sparking a diamond rush. For a brief, gilded period, the wealth extracted from the desert funded a life of extraordinary luxury in an extraordinarily harsh place. Residents sipped champagne in fine cafes while sand piled against their garden fences. Then the dream evaporated as quickly as it appeared. The decline began after World War I, when the region came under South African administration. More critically, the easily accessible surface diamonds around Kolmanskop were soon exhausted. Prospectors discovered vastly richer diamond fields further south along the coast, drawing the industry and its workers away. By the early 1950s, the town was emptying, and the last families departed for good in 1954. What followed was not violent collapse, but a patient, poetic reclamation. The desert, held at bay for decades by daily sweeping and constant effort, began its inevitable return. Sands now drift through broken doorways, fill grand rooms to their windowsills, and cascade down staircases into silent halls. Kolmanskop stands today not as a ruin of war or plague, but as a perfectly eloquent monument to the fleeting nature of resource-based prosperity. Its slowly buried ballroom is a powerful visual lesson, a reminder that a town built solely on extracting a finite treasure will share that treasure's fate, destined to be swallowed by the very landscape it once sought to conquer. Craco clings to its cliffside with a kind of stubborn grace, a medieval Italian town that seems to grow directly from the rock of Basilicata. For over 1,000 years, its stone houses stacked like steps up the steep hill, a fortress community watching over the surrounding valleys. Life here was always a negotiation with the land, a constant struggle against poor soil and the economic hardship that followed. For generations, the primary export of Craco was not wine or olives, but its own people, as waves of emigration slowly drained its vitality in search of opportunity abroad. Yet the final chapter was written not by economics alone, but by the very earth the town was built upon. Beginning in the 1960s, a series of landslides, triggered by unstable clay subsoils and seismic activity, began to eat away at the town's foundations. Entire sections of the cliff face started to slip away, taking ancient streets and buildings with them. A major earthquake in 1980 further compromised the structural integrity of the entire settlement, leaving cracks snaking up walls and homes tilting at precarious angles. Faced with an imminent threat to life, the Italian government made the difficult decision to mandate a complete evacuation. The remaining residents were relocated to a new town built on safer ground in the valley below, leaving their ancestral home to its fate. What remains is a breathtaking, melancholic sculpture of decay. The empty stone arches of the castle keep frame vast skies, and the nave of the church stands open to the elements, its altar exposed. Nature has begun a gentle reclamation, with wildflowers sprouting from cobblestones and ivy softening the edges of collapsed roofs. This geological abandonment has, ironically, given Craco a second life. Its dramatic, crumbling beauty has made it a sought-after film set, featuring in movies from biblical epics to James Bond adventures. Its silent piazzas and leaning towers now serve as a backdrop for fiction, a poignant twist for a town whose own real story ended when the ground beneath it could no longer be trusted. Craco stands as a powerful reminder that a community's greatest strength, its defensible, elevated position, can, over centuries, become its most profound vulnerability, a lesson etched into the very cliffs that once promised safety. These silent cities scattered across continents and millennia are not random tragedies. When we step back from their individual stories, powerful patterns begin to emerge, revealing the recurring pressures that can cause a civilization to walk away from its home. We can group these abandonments into broad, interlocking categories. The first, and perhaps most relentless, is environmental change. From the drought that emptied Mesa Verde to the shifting rivers that stranded Nia and Loulan, the story of water, or its absence, is a constant refrain. Volcanoes, like the one that buried Akrotiri and Plymouth, represent a more sudden geological force, while the creeping desertification around Timgad and the deforestation suspected at Cahokia and Tikal show a slower, human-accelerated environmental strain. A second major category is economic collapse. A city's reason for being can vanish when its wealth dries up. This is vividly clear in places like Kolmanskop, where the diamonds ran out, or Gunkanjima, where coal became obsolete. The fall of Palmyra and the fading of Ugarit were deaths by economic strangulation, as the vital trade routes that were their lifeblood were rerouted or severed. A city built on a single industry or a specific geographic advantage is profoundly vulnerable when the world's economic currents shift. Then there are the political and social ruptures. This category encompasses the violent and the deliberate. The sacking of cities like Ugarit or the enforced silence of Oradour-sur-Glane are abandonments through war and atrocity. Others, like the gradual fade of the Hittite capital Hattusa, may point to internal rebellion or the collapse of a governing system, and some, like Kayaköy and Varosha, are directly caused by political decisions, treaties, and frozen conflicts that leave communities in a state of permanent evacuation. Yet, as we sort these stories into boxes, a crucial truth becomes apparent. It is remarkably rare for a single, definitive cause to explain a great abandonment. More often, these categories intertwine, creating a deadly synergy. Consider the Maya cities. Political warfare strained resources, while deforestation and drought crippled agriculture, creating a feedback loop of social unrest and environmental failure that no king could stop. At Cahokia, the grand construction that signaled political and religious power may have directly caused the deforestation that led to catastrophic floods, undermining the very society it was meant to glorify. Teotihuacan's fiery end might have been sparked by drought-induced famine that ignited long-simmering social tensions against an anonymous ruling class. This points us toward the concept of the tipping point. A society can often withstand one major stressor, It might endure a period of drought or recover from a lost war or adapt to a shifting trade route. But when multiple crises converge, when environmental change weakens the food supply at the same time that political instability fractures leadership and economic networks fail, the combined weight can push a civilization past a threshold from which it cannot recover. The system becomes too complex to manage, and the social contract that holds the city together dissolves. The decision to abandon is rarely a single moment, but the final acknowledgement of a broken equation. From this tapestry of causes, one thread shines with particular urgency for our own time: the recurring theme of environmental overreach and climate vulnerability. Time and again, we see societies pushing their local environments to the limit, often through the very acts that define their success. Intensive agriculture exhausts the soil. Grand construction consumes forests and alters watersheds. Populations grow, assuming the climate that favored them will remain constant. And when the climate does shift, as it always eventually does, these highly optimized, densely populated systems have no resilience left. They are perfectly adapted to a world that no longer exists. The silent stones of Angkor, Cahokia, and the Indus Valley are not just ruins, they are cautionary case studies in sustainability. They teach us that a civilization's greatest monuments are not proof against a changing sky, and that the most profound mystery of an abandoned city may not be why it was left, but why its people believed it could last forever. From the ruins of Kolmanskop to the silent streets of Pripyat, these 30 stories form a single, powerful lesson. The great abandonments of history are not simple stories of rise and fall, but intricate tapestries woven from environmental strain, economic fragility, and human choice. They show us that a city is not a permanent thing, but a dynamic agreement between a people and their world, an agreement that can be rewritten by a shifting river, a failed harvest, or a single, fateful decision. These silent places are profound teachers of humility, reminding us that every civilization, no matter how grand, operates within the limits of its environment and the strength of its social bonds. The true mystery is often not the disaster itself, but the precise moment when the cumulative weight of challenges becomes too heavy to bear, when the collective decision is made to turn away from home and walk toward an uncertain future. Yet to see these sites only as monuments to failure is to miss their deeper meaning. In every story of abandonment, there is also a story of resilience. The people of Mesa Verde did not vanish, they migrated and carried their culture forward. The citizens of Plymouth rebuilt their lives on a new part of their island. The evacuation of Akrotiri was an act of communal survival. These empty cities are not just endpoints, they are waypoints in the long, adaptive journey of humanity. They stand as stark, beautiful reminders that endings are also beginnings, and that the urge to build, to community, and to endure is far stronger than any single settlement. The stones may be left behind, but the human story continues. We would love to hear from you. Of all these 30 stories of sudden silence, which one lingers most powerfully in your mind? And what do you think it tells us about our own world today?